My name is Audrey Bennett. I'm 28 years old, and until that Saturday night, I honestly believed I was going to marry Vincent Hale. We had been engaged for 6 months, together for 3 years, and if you had asked me before that dinner whether I was happy, I probably would have smiled automatically and said yes. Not because it was completely true. Because I had gotten very good at smoothing the truth down until it looked harmless. The dinner was for Claudia's birthday. Nothing dramatic at first. Just 12 people squeezed around a long table in a restaurant with low golden lights, tiny candles, polished wine glasses, and waiters who moved so quietly they felt like shadows. Everyone was laughing. Everyone looked expensive and relaxed. Vincent sat beside me with one arm draped over the back of my chair like we were still the perfect couple in every photograph. At some point, Marco asked about work, and I mentioned a coworker of mine, Craig, who had been going through a brutal divorce. He completely fell apart in the parking lot, I said. I found him sitting in his car after everyone else had left. He didn't need advice. He just needed someone to sit there with him for a while. So I stayed. How long? Jenna asked. About 2 hours. Before anyone else could respond, Vincent laughed. Not a soft laugh. Not affectionate. A loud, sharp laugh that cut straight across the table. Oh my God, he said, turning to the others. 2 hours in a parking lot listening to some guy cry. That is so Audrey. I looked at him. What's that supposed to mean? He grinned, like he had been waiting for the question. You're basically an emotional support animal. If somebody sighs too loudly, you're already brewing tea and asking about their childhood. A few people chuckled awkwardly. Claudia didn't. Jenna looked down at her plate. That's actually kind of nice, Jenna said carefully. Vincent waved her off. It's exhausting. Last week, she spent half the evening with Mrs. Chun because her cat died. She's 74, I said quietly. She lives alone. Whiskers was her only companion. Vincent pointed at me like I had just proved his point. See, there she goes. Audrey, sweetheart, it was a cat. Something in my chest tightened. It mattered to her. It's embarrassing, he said, still smiling. You act like every feeling is an emergency. The table went quiet in that specific way people go quiet, when they are hoping someone else will rescue the moment. No one did. Vincent leaned back, enjoying the attention now. Remember when we watched that dog movie and you cried? I stared at the candle between us. It was Marley and me, I said. Exactly. A dog movie. Actual tears. He looked around the table. I'm marrying the woman who cries at dog movies and adopts everyone else's emotional damage. Marco shifted uncomfortably. Honestly, I cried at that movie too. Vincent smirked. When you were 12? Last year, actually. Great, Vincent said. Another sensitive one. You and Audrey can start a support group. The laugh that followed was nervous, thin, and uncomfortable. But Vincent heard only the sound of people reacting, and to him that was the same thing as approval. I felt heat crawl up my neck. My hands were folded in my lap, fingers pressing together so tightly my knuckles ached. Then something strange happened. I stopped feeling embarrassed. I stopped wanting him to take it back. I stopped hoping he would notice my face and realize he had gone too far. Instead, I heard my own voice say, "You're right." Vincent blinked. What? You're right, I repeated. Maybe I do need to grow up. His smile returned instantly. Finally, I nodded slowly. Growing up means making mature decisions, doesn't it? Exactly. I looked at him. Really looked at him. The man I had planned a wedding with. The man whose name was on invitations sitting in a box in our apartment. The man who thought kindness was humiliating, unless it benefited him. Then I'll start tomorrow, I said. He laughed. Satisfied. He thought he had won. The rest of the dinner dragged on like a punishment. Vincent kept making little comments. How I remembered birthdays, how I checked on people after bad news, how I sent "thinking of you" texts to friends I hadn't seen in months. He makes it sound like a full-time job, Claudia said, trying to soften it. Vincent shook his head. Nobody needs that much emotional availability from a woman. It's clingy. I smiled when I was supposed to. I ate my pasta. I thanked Claudia for inviting us. I even let Vincent hold my hand when we walked to the car. But inside, something had gone very still. Not broken. Clear. The next morning, while Vincent was at brunch with 2 of his old college friends, I called Derek. Do you still have access to that cabin your family rents out? I asked. There was a pause. Yeah. Why? I need somewhere quiet for a while. How soon? Today. Another pause. Then Derek's voice softened. Audrey, are you safe? That question almost undid me. Yes, I said. I'm safe. I just need to be somewhere I can think. Within an hour, I had packed clothes, toiletries, my laptop, important documents, and the small velvet box containing my grandmother's earrings. I left everything else. The apartment looked peaceful when I finished. That was the cruel part. Sunlight on the kitchen counter. Vincent's coffee mug in the sink. Our wedding binder open beside a list of floral deposits and cake-tasting notes. I stood there for a long moment, then wrote one note. Vincent, you were right that I need to grow up. Mature adults do not stay in relationships where they are mocked for being kind. I'm staying somewhere else while I figure out what comes next. We can talk later, but I need space first. Audrey. I placed it on the counter, took one last look around, and left. By 2 p.m, my phone was full of messages. Is this a joke? Audrey, where are you? You're seriously doing this over dinner? I was joking. Stop being so emotional. That last one almost made me laugh. Almost. I turned the phone face down and watched the road stretch ahead of me, lined with trees bending in the wind like they were trying to whisper a warning I should have heard years ago. By evening, I reached the cabin. It was small, wooden, and cold until I got the heater working. The silence felt strange at first. Then it felt like oxygen. Around 6, my phone rang. Claudia. I almost ignored it. But something made me answer. Audrey? Her voice trembled. Thank God. Are you okay? I'm okay. Vincent is calling everyone. He says you abandoned him over a joke. I closed my eyes. Of course he does. That's not why I called. She inhaled shakily. I need to ask you something. And I know this is weird because we're not even that close. What is it? My dad was diagnosed with early-stage dementia. The room went still. Claudia's voice cracked. I haven't told the group. I tried to tell Vincent a few weeks ago, but he said I was spiraling and changed the subject to your wedding playlist. I don't know what to do, Audrey. I'm scared. I sat down on the edge of the bed. You're not spiraling, I said. You're scared because you love your father. Tell me what the doctor said. And for the next hour, I listened. Not because I was weak, not because I was embarrassing, because sometimes the most mature thing a person can do is stay. The conversation with Claudia lasted nearly an hour and a half, long after the sky outside the cabin had darkened and the windows reflected only my own tired face. I stayed on the phone. I listened as she described sitting across from her father in a sterile doctor's office, while a neurologist carefully explained words neither of them had wanted to hear. Early-stage dementia, monitoring, treatment plans, lifestyle adjustments, support systems, future decline, the vocabulary of fear. I keep thinking they got it wrong, Claudia whispered. That's normal. What if he forgets me someday? The question hung in the silence, not because I didn't have an answer, because nobody did. I don't know, I admitted gently. But right now he remembers you. Right now he needs you. Don't lose today because you're afraid of tomorrow. For several seconds, all I heard was her breathing. Then, a quiet sob. Thank you. You don't have to thank me. Yes, I do. Her voice softened. You actually listen. The words hit harder than she probably intended, because Vincent used to say the exact opposite. That I listened too much. That I cared too much. That I invested too much energy in people who weren't my responsibility. Meanwhile, Claudia was crying with relief simply because someone had given her uninterrupted attention. When we finally ended the call, I sent her links to local support groups, information about dementia specialists, and a few organizations that could help families navigate treatment options. She replied almost immediately. I already feel less alone. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I turned my phone off again. The next few days were surprisingly peaceful. I worked remotely from the cabin, made coffee, read, took long walks through the woods. For the first time in years, I wasn't constantly managing someone else's opinion of me. I wasn't bracing for eye rolls. I wasn't shrinking myself before speaking. I wasn't calculating whether showing concern for someone would trigger another sarcastic comment. It was amazing how much energy that had been consuming. On Wednesday, Derek stopped by with groceries. He took one look at me and smiled. You look different. I've been sleeping. No. He shook his head. It's something else. I raised an eyebrow. What? You don't look tense. That answer stayed with me long after he left. Because he was right. I hadn't realized how tense I'd become. Like someone living beside a smoke detector that beeped randomly throughout the day. Eventually, you stop noticing the sound. Until it finally goes silent. Thursday afternoon, I drove into town to work from a coffee shop. Halfway through answering emails, I heard someone say my name. Audrey. I looked up. Marco. He was carrying a coffee cup and wearing an expression that suggested he'd been debating whether to approach me. Hey. He sat down across from me. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Then he sighed. I owe you an apology. I blinked. For what? For that dinner. You didn't do anything. I didn't stop it. The honesty caught me off guard. Marco rubbed the back of his neck. I should have said something. You looked uncomfortable. I was uncomfortable. He laughed bitterly. Everybody was. I stared at him. Then why didn't anyone say anything? Marco gave a humorless smile. You know how Vincent is. Unfortunately, I did. Too well. Marco leaned forward. Can I tell you something weird? Sure. My girlfriend and I were having problems. I nodded. He continued. Not huge problems, just... We stopped understanding each other. What happened? He laughed. You happened. I frowned. What does that mean? After that dinner, I kept thinking about what you said regarding your coworker. The divorce? Yeah. Marco stirred his coffee. I realized every time my girlfriend came to me upset, I immediately tried to fix the situation. Most people do. Yeah. But she didn't want solutions. She wanted understanding. His smile grew. So I tried something radical. What? I listened. I laughed, despite myself. And we had the best conversation we've had in 6 months. The smile on his face wasn't performative. It was genuine. Relieved. Grateful. She told me she felt heard for the first time in a long time. That's wonderful. It is. His expression turned serious. Then he said something that made my chest tighten. Vincent always mocked that quality in you. I stayed silent. Marco continued. But honestly, it's one of the best things about you. I looked away toward the window. For some reason, hearing that felt harder than hearing criticism. Maybe because praise was harder to dismiss. You know, Marco said, I think Vincent mistakes emotional intelligence for weakness. I swallowed. Maybe. No. Definitely. He paused. Remember when Jenna's mother got sick last year? I nodded. Vincent told her she was being depressing. I remembered. At the time, I'd convinced myself he didn't mean it harshly. Now, I wasn't so sure. Marco shook his head. People remember things like that. The conversation shifted after that. Lighter topics. Work. Life. Random stories. Before leaving, Marco stopped beside the table. A few of us are getting together Saturday night. For what? Board games. I laughed. Seriously? Seriously. His grin widened. Normal people enjoying normal things. I hadn't realized how much I'd missed that. You should come. Will Vincent be there? Marco actually snorted. No. Why? He says game nights are childish. That sounded exactly like him. I agreed to go. Saturday arrived. The gathering was held at Jenna's apartment. Nothing fancy. Just pizza, snacks, music, and people sitting around a dining table arguing about game rules. It felt absurdly refreshing. Nobody was performing. Nobody was competing for attention. Nobody was trying to humiliate anyone else for entertainment. Halfway through the evening, Jenna pulled me aside. Can I tell you something? Of course. She hesitated, then lowered her voice. Claudia told me you helped her. With her dad? Jenna nodded. She needed someone. A sadness crossed her face. She tried talking to Vincent first. I wasn't surprised anymore. Still, hearing it hurt. What happened? He told her she was catastrophizing. I closed my eyes briefly. Of course he had. Jenna folded her arms. You know, I tried talking to him too. When your mom was sick? She nodded. I was terrified. Her voice shook. And he basically told me to stop bringing down the mood. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Jenna laughed sadly. I spent a year thinking maybe I was being dramatic. You weren't. I know that now. The relief in her expression was heartbreaking. Like someone finally receiving permission to stop blaming herself. Later that night, Claudia arrived. She looked exhausted, but stronger than she had sounded on the phone. When she saw me, she immediately hugged me. A real hug. The kind that carried gratitude. "How's your dad?" I asked. "A little better." She smiled. "And we found a specialist." "That's great. Thanks to you." I shook my head. "You did the hard part." "No." Claudia's eyes became emotional. "The hard part was asking for help." Around us, conversations continued. People laughed, shared stories, checked on each other. Something beautiful was happening without anyone announcing it. People were creating community, not because someone organized it, because someone needed it. Near midnight, Marcos started a group chat. The purpose was simple: support Claudia, coordinate meals when needed, help with appointments, share resources, check in regularly. Everybody joined. Everybody contributed ideas. Everybody offered something. As I looked around the room, a realization slowly settled over me. The divide forming wasn't between people who liked me and people who liked Vincent. It was something much deeper, a difference in values. One group believed caring about others mattered. The other believed emotions were inconveniences. And sooner or later, those two philosophies were always going to collide. I just hadn't expected the collision to start with my engagement. By the end of the night, my phone buzzed with messages from people sharing resources for Claudia's family. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, I felt hopeful. Not because my relationship was ending, but because I was finally seeing clearly what kind of people I wanted around me. People who didn't mistake kindness for weakness. People who understood that compassion wasn't embarrassing. People who stayed when things got hard. I had a feeling Vincent wasn't going to react well when he found out what was happening. I just didn't realize how badly. I found out Vincent had discovered the group chat on a Tuesday afternoon. The warning came from Claudia. She called while I was reviewing a report for work. You might want to prepare yourself." I leaned back in my chair. "That sounds ominous." "It is." "What happened?" There was a pause. Then Claudia sighed. "I posted a thank you message." My stomach sank slightly. "On social media?" "Yeah." I already knew where this was going. Claudia continued. "I wanted to thank everyone who has helped my dad these past few weeks. The appointments, the meal schedule, the research, the support." "Okay." I tagged everyone. Another pause. "Especially you." I rubbed my forehead. "Claudia." I know. She sounded guilty, but it was true. Later, after hanging up, I opened the post. There was a picture of Claudia and her father sitting together on a park bench, both smiling, both looking tired. The caption was long and heartfelt. She thanked Marco, Jenna, several others. Then she wrote, "A special thank you to Audrey Bennett, who answered the phone when I was terrified and helped me find resources when I didn't know where to begin. I don't know what I would have done without her. This is what real friendship looks like." Reading it made my eyes sting. Not because I thought I deserved recognition, because I knew how much courage it must have taken for Claudia to publicly acknowledge needing help. Then my phone exploded. One text. Then another. Then 5 more. Then 10. Every single one from Vincent. "You turned my friends against me. This is unbelievable. You planned this. Using Claudia's dad to make yourself look good is disgusting. Pathetic. Manipulative. Call me now." I stared at the screen. The accusations would have devastated me a month earlier. Now they mostly made me tired. For an hour, I ignored him. Then 2 hours. Then 3. The messages kept coming. Finally, on the 24th missed call, I answered. The moment the connection opened, Vincent started talking. "No, actually." Screaming. "How dare you?" I moved the phone slightly away from my ear. "Hello to you too. Don't play innocent." "I'm working, Vincent. What do you need?" "What do I need?" he snapped. "I need you to stop poisoning people against me." I looked out the cabin window. The trees swayed gently in the afternoon breeze. The contrast between the peaceful scenery and Vincent's rage was almost surreal. "I haven't said a negative thing about you." "That's a lie." "It's not." "Then why is everyone taking your side?" There it was. The real issue. Not the post. Not the group chat. Not Claudia. Control. Vincent had always assumed social approval belonged to him. Now that approval was shifting, and he couldn't understand why. I answered carefully. "There aren't sides." "There absolutely are." "No." I kept my voice calm. "We broke up. People are allowed to be friends with whoever they want. They chose you. I closed my eyes. No, Vincent. The silence stretched. Then I said the thing I had been thinking for weeks. They chose kindness. He laughed harshly. Oh, please. I'm serious. You really think you're some kind of saint now? No. Then stop acting like it. I'm not acting like anything. I leaned forward. Claudia needed support. Everyone has problems. Exactly. What does that even mean? It means people remember how they're treated when they're struggling. For a moment, he said nothing. Then, you're twisting things. Emmy? I thought, or are you hearing them clearly for the first time? Vincent, I said softly, when Jenna's mother was sick, what did you tell her? His silence answered before he did. That's different. How? I was trying to help. You told her to stop being depressing. She was talking about it constantly. Her mother had cancer. Another silence. Then, you're taking everything out of context. I almost laughed. 3 years. 3 years of explanations. 3 years of context. 3 years of excuses. Suddenly, I was exhausted by all of it. What about Claudia? I asked. What about her? She told you about her dad. His voice immediately hardened. She was catastrophizing. She was scared. Same thing. There it was. The sentence that explained everything. To Vincent, vulnerability was weakness. Fear was weakness. Sadness was weakness. Grief was weakness. Need was weakness. Anything that required empathy made him uncomfortable. And rather than learn how to handle discomfort, he mocked the people experiencing it. I realized then that the problem had never been my sensitivity. The problem was his inability to sit with emotions that couldn't be solved, controlled, or dismissed. Nobody's laughing anymore, Vincent. The words came out quietly, but they landed. What? The jokes. I stared out at the forest. The jokes aren't funny anymore. He didn't respond. So I continued. You called me embarrassing for helping people. Silence. You mocked Claudia. Silence. You dismissed Jenna. Silence. You made fun of Marco. Silence. You mocked me for crying. Silence. Each example felt like laying down another stone, building a road back through years of memories. A road Vincent clearly didn't want to walk. Finally he spoke. You always make me the villain. I blinked. The statement was so unexpected that for a moment I didn't know what to say. Then realization hit. For Vincent, criticism wasn't information. It was attack. Accountability wasn't reflection. It was punishment. And because he felt attacked, he never examined the behavior itself. Only the discomfort of being confronted. I'm not making you anything. My voice remained calm. I'm describing what happened. You think you're better than me. No. Yes, you do. No, Vincent. I swallowed. I just think kindness matters. For several seconds all I heard was breathing. Then his voice changed. The anger remained. But underneath it, something else had appeared. Fear. Real fear. What if I lose everyone? The question surprised me. It sounded younger. Smela. Less defensive. I answered honestly. You won't lose everyone. They already stopped calling. I didn't know what to say. Because that part might actually be true. Not because people were choosing me. Because people were reevaluating him. And those are very different things. Eventually he spoke again. What do you want from me? The old Audrey would have rushed to comfort him. Would have explained. Guided. Managed. Fixed. The new Audrey stayed quiet for a moment. Then answered. I don't want anything from you. Another silence. A long one. Then he hung up. No goodbye. No apology. Just a click. The following days were strangely quiet. No texts. No calls. Nothing. Part of me wondered whether the conversation had finally gotten through. Another part knew Vincent too well. People who build their identity around being right rarely surrender easily. The real storm, I suspected, hadn't arrived yet. And I was right. 3 days later, Derek called. The moment I answered, he sounded concerned. Audrey, what happened? Vincent's here. I sat up. What? He's driving around looking for your cabin. My stomach tightened. How did he find out where I was? I don't know. Derek exhaled heavily. But I think he's about 10 minutes away. Outside, dark clouds were gathering over the trees. The wind had begun to rise. Branches scraped softly against the roof. Something told me this wasn't going to be a calm conversation. After weeks of blaming everyone else, Vincent was finally coming face to face with the one person he could no longer avoid. Me. 10 minutes later, I heard tires crunching across the gravel outside the cabin. Then a car door slammed. Hard. The sound echoed through the trees. For a moment, I remained seated at the kitchen table, staring at my coffee cup. Part of me wanted to ignore the knocking that I knew was coming. Part of me wanted to drive away before he reached the door. But another part, the calmest part, knew this conversation had been inevitable. The pounding started seconds later. Audrey! Another bang. Audrey, open the door! I stood slowly and walked across the cabin. When I opened the door, Vincent was standing there breathing hard. He looked terrible. His hair was unwashed. Dark circles sat beneath his eyes. His clothes looked wrinkled, as though he'd been sleeping in them. For a split second, I barely recognized him. Then he looked up, and the anger returned. There you are. I'm right here. You've been avoiding me. I asked for space. You disappeared. No. I met his eyes. I left. The distinction mattered. His jaw tightened. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then Vincent pushed past me and stepped inside. I closed the door behind him. Rain had started outside. Soft at first, a steady tapping against the windows. Vincent turned toward me. You ruined everything. The accusation came so quickly that I almost laughed. Instead, I asked, what exactly did I ruin? My friendships, my reputation, my life. The words hung in the room. I studied him carefully. For the first time, I noticed something important. He genuinely believed it. He wasn't pretending. He truly thought the collapse around him had appeared out of nowhere. That realization made me sad more than angry. Vincent. My voice softened. Do you really think I have that much power? His eyes flashed. Don't do that. Do what? Act calm. I almost smiled. The irony was incredible. For years he told me I was too emotional. Now he was angry because I wasn't emotional enough. You turned everyone against me. No. Yes. No. I shook my head. They made their own decisions. They stopped inviting me places. Why do you think that happened? His expression hardened. Because you poisoned them. Isail. There it was again. The refusal to look inward. The need for every problem to have an external culprit. Someone else to blame. Someone else responsible. Someone else guilty. Anyone but him. I walked toward the window. Outside, rain streamed down the glass. The forest beyond looked blurred and distant. When my grandmother died, I said quietly, How much time did you give me to grieve? His face changed. What? You heard me. Audrey. 2 days. He stared at me. I continued. 2 days before you told me I was dwelling on it. His mouth opened. Then, closed. Another memory surfaced. When Derek's son was born premature, do you remember what you said when I spent time at the hospital? Vincent looked away. I didn't stop. When Mrs. Chun lost her husband, what did you call me for checking on her? Silence. When Jenna was terrified about her mother? Silence. When Claudia needed support? Silence. The room felt smaller with every unanswered question. Finally, Vincent spoke. Those situations were different. How? He hesitated, then hesitated again, and again. Because there was no answer. Only excuses. Excuses that suddenly sounded weak even to him. I looked at him. Really looked at him. Not the man I hoped he could become. Not the man I had imagined during wedding planning. Not the future husband I had defended to friends. Just the person standing in front of me. A person who had spent years treating empathy like a flaw. You know what's strange? I asked. His eyes lifted toward mine. What? For years, I thought something was wrong with me. His expression flickered. I thought I was too sensitive. The words felt surprisingly easy to say. I thought maybe I cared too much. Outside, thunder rolled softly in the distance. But then I started talking to other people. I thought of Claudia, Marco, Yenna, Derek. All the conversations that had happened after I left. All the stories I'd never fully heard before. They weren't criticizing me for caring. I swallowed. They were grateful. Vincent looked down. For the first time since arriving, he didn't interrupt. They weren't embarrassed by compassion. I continued. They were hungry for it. A long silence followed. Then something unexpected happened. His shoulders sagged. Not dramatically. Just slightly. like a man who was suddenly too tired to keep carrying something heavy. I didn't mean to hurt people. The words were quiet, almost lost beneath the rain. I believed him. That was the complicated part. I didn't think Vincent woke up every morning wanting to be cruel. I thought he'd spent his entire life convincing himself that emotions were weaknesses because acknowledging them felt dangerous. But intent and impact aren't the same thing. You did hurt people. His eyes closed. The truth landed harder than any accusation. For several moments, neither of us spoke. Finally, he whispered, "I don't know why I'm like this." The anger was gone now. The defensiveness, too. Only confusion remained. And beneath that, fine. I remembered something he had once told me about his childhood. A mother who weaponized guilt. A father who mocked vulnerability. A household where emotions were either used as leverage or ignored completely. Back then, I had felt sympathy. Now I felt something more complicated. Compassion. But compassion no longer meant sacrificing myself. "I'm sorry that happened to you," I said. His eyes lifted. "But it's not an excuse to keep hurting people." He stared at me for a long time, then nodded once. A tiny movement, barely visible, but real. Outside, the rain began to slow. The storm was passing. Inside, another storm had already ended. Vincent looked around the cabin, then back at me. "So that's it?" I took a slow breath. "Yes. 3 years. A proposal. Wedding plans. Shared dreams. All ending with a simple word. Yes." Oddly enough, it didn't feel tragic. It felt honest. Eventually Vincent stood. Neither of us cried. Neither of us shouted. Neither of us begged. The relationship had already ended weeks earlier. This was simply the moment we finally acknowledged it. At the door, he paused, then asked, "Do you hate me?" The question surprised me. I considered it carefully, then shook my head. No. He looked relieved, and somehow disappointed too. Maybe because hatred would have meant I still carried him with me. I didn't. "I hope you figure things out." He nodded slowly, then left. The door closed behind him, and that was the last time I saw him as my fiancé. 1 month later, the wedding was officially cancelled. Dividing belongings turned out to be far less dramatic than people expected. There were no screaming matches, no legal threats, just paperwork, boxes, signatures, endings. The friend group changed too, not because people chose Team Audrey or Team Vincent. That narrative was too simple. The real divide happened naturally. People who valued emotional honesty gravitated toward one another. Game nights continued. Support groups continued. Friendships deepened. Claudia's father began treatment. Jenna's mother recovered. Marco eventually proposed to his girlfriend after months of healthier communication. Life moved forward. As for Vincent, I heard updates occasionally, mostly through mutual friends. The biggest surprise came 6 weeks later. A text message. I stared at the screen for nearly a minute before opening it. It read, "I'm in therapy." A second message arrived. "My therapist thinks I learned to view emotions as manipulation because that's how I grew up." Then, that's not an excuse, just an explanation. A final message appeared. "I'm sorry, Audrey. You deserved better than what I gave you." I read the text twice, then 3 times. Eventually I replied, "Thank you for apologizing. I genuinely hope therapy helps. I wish you peace." A few minutes later, his response arrived. "Thank you." That's a very Audrey thing to say. For the first time in a long while, the comment made me smile. Because this time, it wasn't an insult. A few months later, I started dating again. Slowly, carefully. Eventually I met Simon, a middle school teacher with a crooked smile and an unfortunate addiction to documentaries about historical disasters. One night, we were watching a video about soldiers returning home to surprise their families. I glanced over. His eyes were wet. "Are you crying?" I asked. He laughed. "Maybe." I smiled. Years ago, I might have worried that answer was embarrassing. Now I found it beautiful. Simon squeezed my hand. "You know what I like most about you?" "What?" "The way you care about people." Such a simple sentence, yet hearing it felt like stepping into sunlight after years of standing in the shade. Vincent had been right about one thing. I did need to grow up, just not in the way he meant. Growing up wasn't learning to care less. It wasn't becoming harder, colder, more detached. Growing up was understanding that kindness is not weakness, empathy is not embarrassment, and the right person will never ask you to shrink your heart so they can feel more comfortable. Sometimes maturity means staying. Sometimes maturity means helping. Sometimes maturity means listening. And sometimes maturity means walking away from the people who treat those qualities like flaws. That was the lesson I carried forward. Not from the relationship, from surviving it.